All right, let's talk standard. Let's talk about one of the weirdest standard formats I think we've ever seen, just because so much has changed on accident because the cards are too good. So you wind back the clock. We had I remember the last Invitational we covered. Emrakul was running wild in Atlanta. Jacob Ball won that tournament. Marvel putting Emrakul on the battlefield was too good. Some people played Reflector Mage, that's gone. Smuggler's Copter, gone. It was just complete nonsense. All that stuff is gone.
I don't think any of the 8 decks from the last Invitational would be standard legal right now.
I actually think you're right about that.
What about Joe Bernal's?
His black-green deck?
Yeah.
I think there's some Smuggler's Copters.
Okay,
I think there may have been some Smuggler's Copters.
I just remember it was kind of weak.
It was, by comparison, yeah. It was pretty weak.
It only had one banned card in it.
Yeah,
sure.
He was playing what I would say was fair that weekend. But what kind of makes this format interesting is because we've just had the banning of Marvel. There's been no real standard tournaments to play in. I know you were in Omaha, where Brad Nelson won with Marvel. We'll get to that in just a minute, but you know, we have a brand new format, but then we also have Hour of Devastation. The whole set is live today, so that's coming out in a couple weeks. We'll have the SCG in Cincinnati in July. So we are in this weird little grace period where this might be the only tournament where this standard format matters, which is strange, but people have to prepare for that because there's a lot on the line this weekend. And the place we're going to start is the black-green decks, because those decks have been good when Marvel was legal, when Emrakul was legal, all that stuff. They've been good the entire time. So Craig, I'm going to start with you because you've played these black-green decks. You can be Delirium, you can be Energy, you can be counters with Constrictor, you can do whatever you want.
Sure.
So what do you like with black-green?
At the advent of this format, Brad Nelson was a big proponent of the black-green Energy deck. I was a little bigger fan of the Delirium decks. I just think Grimflayer is such a good card. It's kind of criminally underplayed. Ishkana on the high end is spectacular. You have your tutor effects and Traverse the Uvenwald. It's kind of a deck that can just do everything.
That everything approach is obviously very powerful, but there are different approaches you can take, Matthias. Like Craig mentioned, he liked the Energy versions. A lot of these decks all kind of have Tireless Tracker in them for a longer game. You can go to Ishkana, or you can play another 5-drop like Virtuous Gearhulk. So what's kind of your approach with that deck if you were playing this weekend?
Yeah, well, black-green's so interesting because there's 10 different playable 2-drops, just black-green colors alone. So I think the first thing you want to decide is whether or not you want, you know, Attunes and Cubs or Traverses and Grimflayers. And I agree with Craig here, especially when there's a bigger target on the deck. I think you need some resiliency. So I do like the Traverse, the Delirium builds. I don't know if I actually want to go all the way up to Ishkana. I think my choice would be kind of your aggro counters deck that have the Delirium package, but then still top out at 1, maybe 2 Gearhulks. If you think back to the decks that Ben Stark used to win our Team Baltimore Open, I'd look for something similar to that.
Ryan, black-green, not really your flavor. You know, you're more of a blue mage, but these decks are still powerful, and these are decks that you'd have to beat if you were playing this kind of tournament. So there's many flavors and styles that you can build this deck, just like Matthias mentioned. Is there one that stands out to you of like a version that you didn't like playing against?
The 2 cards that are really the problematic elements for a blue-red control deck to play against are going to be your Ishkanaz, if you go that way, and Tireless Tracker. That's really the big draw for me. This card is quietly extremely powerful. I guess it's louder now. We've seen it in action plenty of times. But Tireless Tracker, resolved, immediate land drop, make a clue token. That's already replacing itself and demanding a premium removal spell in most situations. Tireless Tracker seems to be the biggest draw to these decks to me.
It's a draw that a lot of people have found out and figured out with this deck. Might not start 4 in your main deck, but you're going to play some throughout your 75. And then the question is going to be, are people going to go towards the Cub, you know, Greenbelt Rampagers versions of this deck? Heck, we didn't even really mention it, but some people find a way to put Heart of Kirin in decks like this because that card's very powerful. So is there a best build? No idea, because there's so many different ways you can take the deck, but the flexibility, I think, is what kind of makes this deck it. Now, we talk about a deck that has very little flexibility, zombies, because you just go creature type, okay, I'm going to play that because it's a zombie. Now, it's easy to make fun of this deck, but this is a Pro Tour winning deck.
Right, so this deck won the Pro Tour. We're talking about mono black zombies, and I actually think there's a ton of draw to playing it this weekend. As we learned at the Pro Tour, mono black zombies is a pretty good foil to Mardu decks. And on top of that, black-green doesn't have an easy time with this deck either. So when you start taking decks like Marvel out of the format, Zombies looks pretty good here. It stabilizes the ground very well, and it has some late game against control.
It's tough to pass up on a card like Crypt Breaker, arguably the best 1-drop in the format, Ryan. It replaces itself, it draws cards, it does basically everything the deck needs to do. And then you've got some good high-end cards. You know, you've got Liliana's Mastery, you've got Dark Salvation as a premium removal spell, Diregraph Colossus, Relentless Dead if the game goes late. There's some appeal. I mean, it is straightforward. You and I, and basically everyone up here, has known Jerry Thompson for a really long time. This is not, if we had to have guessed the deck he would have won a Pro Tour with, I would have guessed like 16 one-ofs and some unique card no one saw coming, and not 4 of a bunch of 2/2s.
Yeah.
But if it was good enough for him, yeah, if it's good enough for him, it's probably good enough for us, right?
Yeah, this is definitely a very powerful deck. Previously, there was that debate: do you splash white? Do you stay monocolor? The draw to being the black-white version was because you wanted some answers to Aetherworks Marvel, which you can no longer register in standard tournaments. The mono-black deck does a great job of beating up on other mid-range decks, which is quite nice. When it's one of very few decks you have to gun for, when you don't have this Marvel deck stretching your sideboard slots in a different direction, there's a lot of hate cards that are powerful against zombies. I'm not excited when my opponent registers Magma Spray and I'm casting Crypt Breaker.
That's very true. That's very true. Now, Craig, obviously you've been around the block a time or two. Linear decks like this, for a tournament like this, which is a very skill-intensive tournament, you took second place in one last year. And when you did so, you played Bant Company, which had a lot of play to it.
Yes.
This is the straight and narrow.
Well, we say that, but I don't know if that's necessarily as true as we make it sound.
Okay.
So I think there's a lot more that goes on with these decks. There's a lot of removal, there's a lot of card advantage involved with these decks. They've got some graveyard recursion. It's not just play a 1-drop, play a 2-drop, play a 1-drop and a 2-drop on 3, and attack every turn.
Okay.
You know, they've got pump effects, they've got recursive effects, they've got removal. There's a whole package here.
It is kind of a deeper deck on the surface. Now, the one area I think this deck lacks is just a good sideboard. You know, you're kind of reaching for Transgresses and Gontis, and you know, sideboard cards, it feels like 12 through 15 aren't very good.
No.
I will say that. So maybe that's what's not a draw to the deck, but the main deck configuration is pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Well, one thing, I think without Aetherworks Marvel being oppressive on the format, people are going to be much better positioned to take on zombies decks.
I agree with that. I think it's a pretty easy deck to gun for.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different ways to go about doing it. We'll get to blue-red decks in just a moment. But Matthias, you mentioned a deck that zombies kind of cleans up on. That's Mardu. And Ryan, I'm going to start with you. Now, obviously, Mardu vehicles is what it's kind of called. Not a ton of vehicles in the deck, but we'll stick with the name for now. Maybe people will have Harvester and Caravan this weekend. Who knows? But the hallmark of the deck is obviously Gideon, Ally of Zendikar, the card that many people think maybe should be banned, maybe it shouldn't be, but it's here to stay. You've got Heart of Kiran, you've got Toolcraft Exemplar, you've got Unlicensed Disintegration, and you've got a very good sideboard. Where Zombies has a bad one, this deck has maybe the best one. Yep. So it doesn't have blue in it. Well, I guess it could, but most versions don't have blue in it. But how do you feel about this deck?
This deck's really powerful, and I would actually make the argument that Heart of Kiran is the hallmark card of the deck. Gideon, very powerful. The format's kind of driven to a point now where it's kind of do or die on that Heart of Kiran action. If they have that on 2, it's hard for a lot of decks to recover. In particular, like a blue-red control deck, if you're playing Magma Spray, you can't really deal with the 4/4. You can get to Harness Lightning if you have an Ether Hub, but it can be a big ask to actually answer that card on the battlefield. And the sideboard plan is really what makes Mardu vehicles shine. It can choose to go bigger or smaller based on what the opponent is doing, and that ability to iterate in sideboarded games is what makes this a more exciting choice than zombies, for example.
Craig, I'm going to come to you. Here's the thing about this Mardu vehicles deck. Mardu, I kind of want to call it Mardu Control sometimes, but then sometimes it goes Toolcraft Exemplar, Heart of Kiran, you know, Unlicensed Disintegration your guy, and it's an aggro deck.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of flexibility to it, and it is what I like to consider, it's a 75 card deck. Where Zombies is kind of a 6 card deck, this is a 75 card deck.
For sure, and you're talking about how it's the best sideboard. I actually think it has so much flexibility in the main deck, where it gets to pick and choose if it knows what it's going to be playing against. It can play Archangel Avacyn, or it can play Glorybringer. You know, it can be bigger. We've seen it play Walking Ballistas. We've seen it be lower to the ground with just a whole bunch of 2-drops and go beat down on people. It's the flexibility of this deck to play just all premium cards, no matter what your strategy is.
And none of the cards are bad, like Craig mentioned. You know, I take a look at a card like Veteran Motorist, where that card got kind of pushed out once everybody moved to Walking Ballista. I don't know if people are still in the Walking Ballista plan, but if they're not, Motorist is a really good card then. So what do you do?
Well, I mean, this is just one of the strengths of the Mardu deck. In a lot of ways, this is your Jund deck of the format. This is a 3-color deck. And when you talk about Modern, you'd say, like, when Jund gets good is when your opponents are less diverse, when Jund can, you know, pick what it's playing against. And right now, Standard is a bunch of creature decks. There's, you know, outside of blue-red, which we'll get to in a second, everybody's playing creatures. So yeah, Mardu can tee off on this. You're gonna see 3 unlicensed Disintegrations in the main. I'm seeing players out of their sideboards go back to the, you know, Oath of Liliana, Oath of Chandra, 4 Planeswalkers, 3 Fumigates plan. In this kind of metagame, I mean, we forget, the last Pro Tour, people were talking about Mardu as the only tier 1 deck.
Yeah. And things kind of changed a little bit, but you got to remember that Pro Tour as well, where Mardu took the top 6 slots as well.
Right.
Pro Tour before that. So every good team figured out that deck was the best deck and gravitated towards it. Will the best players in the room do that this weekend? We'll find out. 2 more decks to go. One of them, Brad Nelson, a very big proponent of. He got me to play it in a PTQ in Cleveland last weekend. I lost. Thanks for asking. But it was good. I think the deck was good. The Steamer Energy deck that Brad handed to me. You've got Whirler Virtuoso, Rogue Refiner. You can go to Glorybringer. You can go to Elder Deep Fiend. This is another kind of customizable deck, Craig, and it uses the energy package. Now, it's without Marvel, thank goodness, but there's still plenty of good cards in this deck.
One, I feel like it's almost the Mardu Vehicles deck in different colors.
Okay.
You know, they've got all of these cards that create a ton of utility. They're good on offense, they're good on defense, they're drawing extra cards, they're accumulating all this energy, and you know, good 2 drops, 3 drops, 4 drops, and then they can have that big top end that you talked about if they want to.
Yeah, you can go over the top. You are kind of customizable, Matthias. One thing I like about this deck, though, you take a look at Mardu Vehicles, that's a deck that plays 25, 26 lands. This is a deck that plays 18, 19 lands.
Right.
So you get to skimp a little bit because you've got a Tune with Ether, you've got Server the Conduit. Players get to cheat on lands. That's kind of appealing for this deck.
So this is a deck that really we started seeing at Grand Prix Omaha, and I'm actually a little surprised to see it still in the metagame after the Marvel banning. In a lot of ways, this felt to me like a black-green energy deck. Where was this mid-range slot? It was playing some threats that are a little less efficient so that it could play counter spells, and that made sense with Marvel in the metagame. When Marvel's banned, I expected this deck to go away, but it really hasn't, and I think where it's going to go from here, I'm going to see that this weekend.
Yeah, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this deck, Ryan, because you are a deck without Marvel now. You still have some powerful cards, and you still have the energy mechanic where no one else really does besides black-green energy. Blue-red kind of has a small sampling of it with Harness Lightning and Hub, but for the most part, you're abusing energy where other people are not. Is that something that's appealing to you?
The abusing energy, it is nice. The payoffs are not as good as they have been previously, though sometimes Whirler Virtuoso can just come down and win a game. Say if you have 12 energy, you can make 4 Thopters immediately. That's a very significant payoff. This deck actually reads a lot like the Jund of the format, and I don't mean like the format-dominating deck. I mean the deck that's loaded up with 2-for-1s.
Sure.
And the better other decks in the format are capable of generating their own card advantage, the less appealing the abstract good cards deck is. This would not be my pick for the weekend, but it's certainly very powerful.
I'm curious to see if Brad will go towards this strategy again, or if other players of his caliber will go towards this strategy. You're without Marvel, and that's a big loss, but Elder Deep Fiend and Glorybringer might be big games.
Yep.
So we'll see where players move there. And our final deck, we've teased a little bit, is Blue-Red Control. And there are other decks in the format. We know that. We know there's been a Ketchum Monuments deck that's been doing well on Magic Online and some other decks because people are brewing in this brand new format. But Blue-Red Control is in this interesting spot where Torrential Gearhart is one heck of a card. We all know that, and it's kind of like, when is this thing going to break out and dominate a tournament? That's what we're all kind of waiting for at this point. You've also got Chandra Flamecaller, Glimmer of Genius to draw cards, Harness Lightning as a removal spell, and you can kind of season the taste. Now, this was a deck that people went to beat Marvel. Some successful, some not. And it was a deck that really, I think, did okay against zombies, too. So, Matthias, I'll start with you, because I know that you've been dabbling in Black, Green, and Mardu, but this is more your home, I would say, more so than those decks. And we don't have a combo deck in the format unless you really want to dabble in new perspectives. So, how do you feel about
I did build it.
I know you did. Of course you did. Yeah, of course you did. How do we feel about Blue-Red Control?
This deck's a trap.
Ooh, okay.
No. I mean, yeah, I would love to cast Glimmer of Genius and kill spells, but especially with Marvel gone, I'm not. The only matchup I like anymore is the Zombies matchup with this deck. And I guess, sure, if I play that 6 out of 8 rounds, it's great, but I don't want to play this right now.
Ryan, for you?
So you have several decks in the format that up and down the curve are just raw, powerful cards. Your Mardu Vehicles, your Teamer Energy deck, and this deck, it takes some finesse. There are some very powerful cards. You have your Glimmers, your Torrential Gearhulks, very happy to register those. But if I show up with Magma Spray, and I get paired against a deck that doesn't really care that my deck contains Magma Spray, that's a problem. You have to have the right list for the tournament, and given that there's such little data in the post-ban metagame, it's really hard to register this deck for this event.
Yeah, I think that's the tough part, Craig. Playing a control deck in this format where there is so little data. We have like basically the PTQ from Cleveland at Grand Prix Cleveland last weekend, and the Magic Online results, and then we're not really working with much. So it is tough to play a control deck in this format. Do you agree?
I agree for the most part. I think one thing to consider here is that the format is creatures, creatures, creatures.
True.
You know, so I think if you want to play a blue-red control deck, you can play tons of card draw, you can play tons of removal, you cut almost all the counter spells.
Okay.
You know, the heck with those cards, you don't have to try to be countering Either Works Marvel right now.
True.
And you can still just smash people with Torrential Gearhulks.
That's interesting, right? You could go towards Sweltering Suns, you could maybe splash Radiant Flames, you got Magma Sprays, as Ryan mentioned, Harness Lightnings, all that stuff, and if you're right about that, life is pretty good, because the decks that we mentioned, black-green, all the black-green variants, zombies, Mardu vehicles, Temur Energy, it's a lot of creature decks.
Yeah.
I think the tough part is going to be after your Harness Lightnings and Magma Sprays, you know, what's your next? I agree, you want all kill spells, but what's the next one in line? And maybe we'll see them have to go to a third color to get there, but if that exists, that could be a deck.
Okay. That's it for Standard. Like we said there, we know there are other decks out there. We can't cover them all. Magic Online is producing results like crazy. Same with those PTQs that have taken place, as few of them as there have been. But we know another format is going to be taking place here this weekend, and we're going to get to Modern in just a moment. We take a short break, and we come back for our Modern metagame breakdown.